recording. There we go. Now, first of all, does anybody have an answer for this? What'd you get?
243.275 feet squared.
So we got 243.275. And what'd you have in Richmond? 174 feet squared. At least one of them's not right. Let's take a look. What do we get here? 12 feet. Because if we have A and B, C, A squared, well, 5 squared plus B squared equals 13 squared. That'll be 25 plus B squared equals 169. And you have to subtract. You add it. You got to subtract the 25. So B squared is 144. And no, that's a common mistake. So you square it, you get B is 12. So that's 12. What that means is, over here, this is 12. So now, you have A, B, and C. A squared plus 12 squared equals 15 squared. If you go through all that work, you find that this distance is 9 feet. So now we have, the top is 16. The bottom here is how long? 30. 5 plus 16 plus 9 is 30. So the area is 16 plus 30 over 2 times 12. So we get 46 divided by 2 is 23 times 12 is what? 276 square feet. Yep, unfortunately. But they're both good efforts. Really good efforts. Does that make sense? Now, I will never do something quite that bad to you on a test or quiz. But it's interesting to see what you can do. Now you know. Okay, well, bless you. What if I have a triangle that is 18 inches by 7 inches? Well, this triangle, remember, the only thing we can find the areas of are rectangles. So we have to relate this triangle to a rectangle. Now, I'm not going to chop a piece off and make it a rectangle. I'm going to just make it a big rectangle. That big rectangle would have an area of 18 inches times 7 inches, right? Well, the triangle is what portion of that rectangle? Half. So we just divide it by 2. That'll be 63 inches squared. So, let's say I have 8 feet by 13 feet. What's the area of that triangle going to be? 8 feet times 13 feet divided by 2 gives me 52 square feet. What you come up with? Does that make sense? You guys want to try one? That was a rhetorical question. So 11 inches by 18 inches. Find its area. What'd you get? 99 inches squared. It's 11 times 18 divided by 2. times. Yep. Just like the length times width for the rectangle, you divide it by 2. One more, just to build your confidence. Try that one. What'd you get? 108 centimeters squared. Very good. So 108 centimeters squared. So we're going to find the area of this. What two sides am I going to use? The 9 and 40. Why? They're the legs. They form the right angle. So it'll be 9 inches times 40 inches. Divide by 2, which gives me 180 inches squared.
Now what do you do about the 41?
You could double check 9 squared plus 40 squared equals 41 squared just to make sure, but you don't have to since I gave you that that's a right angle. The 41 does nothing there. Unless you're finding perimeter, then you could add it. You have to add them all up, but we'll get to perimeter later. What's missing on this one? The little square thing saying there's a right angle. Does that mean we can't find the area? There's no right angle? It just means I didn't want to tell you, right? There might still be a right angle there, but it's not indicated. How could we tell if there's a right angle there? Well, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Now, A and B would be the legs, and we don't know if there's a right angle, so how would we know which ones would be the legs? The shorter ones. The hypotenuse, C, is always the longest side. So the two shorter ones have to be A and B. So 24 squared plus 10 squared. Now, I'm not going to put an equal sign in here. I'm just going to put a line. The reason I'm not putting an equal sign in there is I don't know if they're equal. So let's see if these two come out to the same number. 24 squared is 576. 10 squared is 100. That adds up to 676. What's 26 squared? 676. So yes, this is a right angle there. How do we know that right angle goes there? Those are the two shorter sides. The only place the right angle can go is between the two shorter sides. The longest side, as we said, has to always be the hypotenuse. So the area here would be 10 inches times 24 inches divided by 2, which gives us 120 inches squared. Yes. Yep. Times 24. Those are the two legs multiplied together. Yep. Make sure you got the divide by 2. Can we find the area of this triangle?
No.
No. What if I gave you the third side?
Yeah. No.
Only if it turns out to be a right triangle, right? If it doesn't turn out to be a right triangle, having the third side doesn't help us for what we do now. There is a way to find the area with all three sides. And if there's time at the end of the hour, I'll show you that later. But what we need to know is this distance. Because remember, we said when you find areas, you have to have two dimensions that are perpendicular, right angles to each other. So let's say that's 10 inches. Why do we need that distance? Because what we're looking for is this related rectangle that looks like that. And that related rectangle would be 18 by 10. So if that height is 10, then the area is 18 times 10 divided by 2, otherwise known as 90 square inches. Find the area of that triangle. What two numbers do I multiply together? 20 times 23. Those are the two that are perpendicular, they're right angles to each other. What do we do with the 25? Nothing. We ignore it. So 20 times 23 divided by 2 is 230 inches squared. Find the area of this triangle. What two numbers are we going to multiply together? The 11 and the 16. Very good, because they are the ones that are perpendicular. Giving us 88 square feet, or feet squared. Obviously not drawing the scale, but find the area of that triangle. So, what's the first thing we need to find here? The height, right? What's that height going to be? Did you get it to be 20 feet? The legs will be the height and the 15, and 25 would be the hypotenuse, correct? So a squared plus 15 squared would equal 25 squared. And yes, that does come out to be 20. Everybody see where the 20 came from, or anybody want me to work through that? Sure. So, 15 squared is 225. 25 squared is 625. So I have to subtract the 225. A squared equals 400. Square root of 400 is 20. So now, to do the area, what do we multiply? 20 of the feet by 28 feet. Divided by 2, which gives us 280 square feet. Any questions? Do you want to do another one like that? Okay. You got to take the one that is the full side. Yeah. The 15, the 20 by 15 would only give you this piece, but we want the whole thing. Find that area quick. Of course, you know that the first thing you got to find is that height. What'd you get for this? 12 inches. So what do we Okay, let's do that. Here's our right triangle right here.
So we have, basically we have B, or A, and C. We don't have A.
Yeah, A is what we're looking for.
So
A squared,
it's just this one.
yep, plus 5 squared equals 13 squared, right? Nope, because this piece is only 5 right here. 11 goes all the way. Okay, so if you do that out, A comes out to be 12 if you square it out. Let's go through the work. A squared, 5 squared is 25. 13 squared is 169.
Why is it 13, not 11 squares? My diagram's different than yours.
Okay. Everybody see where the A being 12 comes out to be here? You want me to finish that calculation? Okay. So then now what 2 do we use to calculate our area? Now it's the 11 and the 12. Because they are right angles to each other. They're perpendicular. And this is the whole base. Because remember, if I draw in the whole rectangle, that whole rectangle will be 11 by 12. So 11 inches by 12 inches divided by 2 is 66.
66 inches.
Perfect.
I don't like
something like this. This is still able to be found just doing base times height divided by 2, or length times width divided by 2. I could chop this up to be a rectangle still. If I do this, what I have, if I chop that off, now it's going to be some fancy cutting. If I cut it off, what I can do is I can see that, let's do this. If I look at this here, that purple rectangle is, or that purple triangle is half of the big green rectangle. If I cut it here, this missing piece is half of that brown rectangle. So by subtracting them out, what I'm really getting is the rectangle that has the 18-inch base. Now I don't expect you to understand that, but what you need to know is all we need here is the 18-inch base that goes from here to here, and the 10-inch height. So what we are going to use for our area is 18 inches times 10 inches divided by 2 is 90 square inches. This here?
Yeah.
Because this part of the triangle isn't there. There isn't that part. The base only goes from here to here. No, the red line is just so we can extend it out so we can find the height. I could have put that anywhere. I could have put that like right here if I wanted to. Oops, I don't want that black. I could have put this here and had to extend this out. All I did is extend that out so that that's 10 inches is all that's showing. The height, the overall height is 10 inches. Even though this peak here is not above the base, it's still 10 inches up to it. Okay, we're going to lay off of triangles for a while. And we're going to talk about circles. Pretend that's a circle. As bad as I am at drawing straight lines, I am worse at drawing circles.
No, you have an app on there that will put a circle on the board.
Yeah, but then I have to switch menus, and then I have to go back. It takes like 4 different clicks to switch menus. It's not worth it. Start your own class and run it the way you want to. Okay. So anyway, I'm sorry. Defining features of a circle. The center of a circle, of course, defines where it's located. That has no dimensions, so we really can't measure anything there. The distance from the center out to the edge of the circle is called a radius. A line segment that has its endpoints on the circle is called a chord. If that chord happens to go through the center of the circle, it is called a diameter. Now, this is our first mathematical relationship. D for diameter is equal to 2 times the radius. Makes sense, right? So if I have a circle that has a radius of 7 inches, what's the length of the diameter? 14 inches. Very good. Now, when it comes to circles, there is this magical number, not really magical, but kind of mysterious number called pi. Pi is equal to about 3.14159. We're just going to say 3.14 and round it there. That's why I put the little squiggly lines. Pi actually goes on forever. What pi is the ratio between the distance around a circle, which is called its circumference, and its diameter. Now that knowledge that it's a ratio isn't terribly useful. What is more useful is if I multiplied by the diameter, I would get that the circumference of a circle, capital C, is equal to pi, that little symbol is pi, times the diameter. So if I have a circle with a diameter of 8 feet, the distance around it, its circumference, is going to be 3.14 times 8, otherwise known as 25.12 feet. In your notes, find the circumference of that circle. The circumference is going to be 3.14 times what? 10. Because the 5 is the radius. Circumference is pi times diameter, which would be pi times 10. So 31.4 inches. I had to keep you on your toes. Area of a circle. Number of degrees in a circle. Some of you already know that the area of a circle is what? Pi r squared. Pi times the radius squared. Where does that formula come from? Your math teacher gave it to you. That's where it came from. Let's take a circle with a radius of r. So in other words, it has a diameter of 2 times r, 2r. The circumference of that circle is going to be what? Pi times 2r, or 2 times pi times r, right? Well, here's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to cut this circle in half. I'm just going to look at half the circle. The whole circumference was 2 times pi times r. What's this distance around here? Just pi times r. Half of that. Divided by 2, it cancels out the 2, right? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this half circle, I'm going to cut it into thin pi wedges, as thin as I can get. This is kind of the theory of calculus. You cut stuff into thin enough wedges. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fan out those wedges. Like that. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the other half into the equally thin pi wedges. And when I fan them out, they're going to fit perfectly in here. You get the picture. Well, this distance here is the radius of the circle, right? This distance here, if I cut these thin enough, is just this distance around that half circle, pi times r. That is essentially a rectangle that is a length of pi r and a width of r. The area is pi r squared. Now, if you didn't understand what I just did, what matters is you know that the area of the area of a circle is pi times radius squared. But I like to show you that because there are some people that think that's really neat to see where that formula comes from. It's surprisingly simple, isn't it? If you don't see that, all that matters is what's going to happen next. How would I find the area of this? Well, it's pi, or 3.14, times 7 squared, which is what? 153.86 inches squared. But what?
Well, isn't it 2 times r? So I mean, when the
No, it's r squared. 7 squared is 49. 7 times 7.
Is area always inches or squared?
Squared, yeah. Area is always squared. So you're thinking circumference, which was pi times diameter,
Yeah.
or pi times double the radius. Area is pi times the radius squared. Not double the radius, but squared. So that's 7 to the power of 2, not 7 times 2.
So the area is pi.
Yeah, we have two formulas. Circumference is pi times diameter, or 2 times pi times radius. Area is pi times radius squared.
I don't know what she means.
But depending on whether you're given the diameter or the radius. Because the diameter is just 2 times the radius. They're the same formula, just one is with the right radius, one's with the diameter. So for this circle, if this is 4 feet for the radius, find the area.
Yeah,
50.24? Perfect. 3.14 times 4 squared. 4 squared is 16 times 3.14 is 50.24. Find the area of that circle. In my formula here, where did the 5 come from? Half of the 10, because it's radius squared. It's got to be 5 that we're going to use for the radius. And it's roughly 78.5. I rounded a little bit there. What's you got? 78.5? That works.
yeah.
Pi times diameter is circumference. Area is pi times radius squared. Yes. Yes, sir. Yep, and it will be off by a few decimal places if you use the pi symbol. In my math lab, it'll tell you what it wants, and the problem, usually it'll say 3.14. Now, if you use the pi key on the calculator, technically you are getting a more exact answer. So if you use the pi key and my math lab says it's wrong, on the homework, don't worry about it. I'll just correct that when I transfer the grade to Blackboard. On a quiz, if you use the pi key and when you go back to look it over, your answer's off by like let's say that you gave 25.13 and my math lab says it's 25.12 and it called it wrong. Send me an email and I will change that quiz score for you. When I do a paper and pencil test, I'll do the answer key with both answers on. But normally my math lab will tell you what it wants you to use, but if you use the pi key instead, I will fix it for you. Okay, so now I gave you the 12 inches is the diameter across here. Now note, what did I ask you to find? Circumference. Circumference is the distance around, and the formula, you've got it, is pi times diameter. So for this one, I'm going to do 3.14 is my pi times what? Just 12. No squared, no anything else. 3.14 times 12, which is 37.68 inches. Why is it not inches squared? Because it's circumference. It's just a length. Yes. Now this picture looks shockingly similar, but what did I ask you to find? The area. What's the formula for the area? Pi times radius squared. What's the radius here? Not 12, it is 6. Half the diameter. So the area is pi times 6 squared, which is 113.04 inches squared because it is an area. What do you think? I know. I get a kickback. I get a kickback from the paper companies on your tablets too.
You know I'm on my third one.
Cool. In your notes, find the circumference. Circumference is pi times diameter. What's the diameter here? 3.14 times 14. Diameter is twice the radius. You could use 2 times pi times 7 if you wanted to. Yes, that would be the same thing. We get what? 43.96 centimeters. How are we doing? In your notes, find the area of that one. You found the circumference. You took 16 times pi. That would be circumference. 8, okay. It is 8. We need the radius, but it's going to be 8 squared. Pi times radius squared. Which is, what, 200.96? Those are going to take a while to get used to, aren't they?
Yes.
There's a new quiz due tomorrow, Friday, at 11:59 p.m.
Is it on the show?
Yes.
Can you give me like 12 chances this week?
There's a new homework due for Tuesday. If you get the first 2 done and you need it, let me know. Have a great weekend.